My name is Ankur,
And I'm Jai.
and this is the Non Chill podcast.
Yep.
Today we're going to discuss a topic, but before we dive into that, we should make a disclaimer of sorts that we're not experts or professional in any field we are going to talk about, or any topic for that matter. Basically, what we're saying is that we're not going to go do any research on anything we're going to talk about. So take everything we say with a grain of salt. And to clarify our motives and purposes, why are you doing this podcast, Jay?
Yep. As for me, I think we'll discuss and we're discussing about the topic and putting our knowledge onto the table so that others can grasp. Maybe the people will relate, or maybe they can enlighten us with more knowledge. So it's like a knowledgeable affair for each other, right?
Yeah, I agree. And to add to that, I have to say that when we talk out loud, we think in a way that allows us to express our opinions to each other constructively and form our arguments more clearly. So it's kind of a communication skill development of sorts. So now that we're done with the formalities, we should go right into our topic, which is
Extroversion and introversion.
okay, so we should begin with definition of both of these terms. Okay, let's bring up our Wikipedia to just define the terms. Okay, I'll start. Okay, introversion is the state of being predominantly interested in one's own mental state.
And for extroversion, it's like extroversion is a state of primarily obtaining gratification from outside oneself.
So this seems like a very clinical way of describing introversion and extroversion, but this is not. This is actually a psychological evaluation. It's not even called extroversion. It's called extroversion. But we're not going to discuss the medical term. We're going to discuss the more popularly used term extroversion and introversion. When we talk about extroversion, isn't this isn't what comes to mind? What do you think comes to mind?
I think extroversion means a very fun-loving, outgoing person who is very socially active.
I kind of agree. Yeah, they live in the public. They enjoy being outside and in social situations.
So it's like extroversion people have a public image to maintain other than their own self-image, I think.
Yeah, kind of.
And for introversion, like I have a different view. I think introverts, there are a lot of misconceptions regarding introverts into the society.
What do you think they are?
As a society, the misconceptions that they have for introverts, it's like they don't like to enjoy a lot in social environment, or like they just want to be in one environment or in one surrounding just by themselves. I think that's not true.
It kind of depends. So before we go further, we should introduce ourselves as what we are in the spectrum of introversion and extroversion. I think I am an introvert, and what do you think you are?
I think I can count myself as an extrovert, maybe.
Yeah, that's where the misconceptions come in,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, there are a lot of traits that are generally attached to extroverts and introverts, and it's not necessary everyone will comply or like satisfy those misconceptions or the general traits that are being attached.
Yeah, and this is not just a matter of if you're extrovert you just do that, or if you're an introvert you just stay inside and do nothing else. This is kind of part of the misconceptions, and just like you said that introverts are not introverts are considered as shy, as antisocial, and they don't like to go outside and discover new places or socialize, which is basically what extroverts like. But what do you think are the misconceptions about extroverts?
I think it's on the other side of the spectrum. It's like extroverts are considered to be just outgoing person. They don't like to be uh, with oneself alone sometimes, or it's like they always are hyper energetic just to get into a social environment, or talk to people a lot and just be with them, and they can never be with oneself at one place. It's like that. I think that's what bugs me a lot about the people who generalize extroverts as an outgoing animal, an outgoing person, just that, I mean.
Yeah, that's the problem with categorizing anything at all, right? You put someone in a category and you expect everyone in that category to comply with that sort of trait. But when it comes to extroverts and introverts, and it sort of is a spectrum. When we talk about extroversion and introversion, no one is literally an extrovert and only an extrovert, or just an introvert and nothing else. They're on the spectrum. And do you think? Do you think introverts are born that way or extroverts are born that way, or is the society in any way responsible for they being like they are?
I think society has a very small part to play in this. I don't think the major factor is that. I think it depends on person to person on how they want to live their life. I mean, to be born with it, that's kind of harsh. I mean, they have their mentality born with, but how they like to live out their life and how they want their social life to be and how they want to spend time with oneself. It's actually very relative to the person. So very subjective topic, and the people, they think that that guy is an extrovert. Suppose that guy is an extrovert, so he'll comply to all the traits, which is actually untrue. We just leave out the options that he can also have the traits of introverts, or maybe he likes to go out, but because he doesn't want to be in a very self environment. Maybe I think that we should also consider other options other than what the traits of extroverts are, if we are trying to claim that guy is an extrovert.
But there are certain traits that are related to extroverts, right? So when you identify as yourself as an extrovert, do you think you were molded that way by your environment, or do you think you were born that way and it's in your biology?
I think I like to side with the I like to bend towards the born side, because I was a very social person since my childhood, and that's how I have lived my life. So that's how I think of myself everywhere I go. So it's not like I don't like to be with myself sometimes, but I like to be with people as well as opportunities get. I mean, yeah, so it's not very socially molded subject. It's very personal opinion subject, personal thinking of the.
So I think I agree, but
What is your why do you think of yourself as an introvert?
because the traits that are applied to introverts apply to me too. That's how you categorize, right?
No, I mean, like, are all the traits, or like there are only just one, like, couple of specific traits that are like
Yeah, like
dominant for introverts, but they apply so that you can call yourself. What is it that you don't like about the extroverted traits, or you don't usually follow?
it's not that I don't follow those traits, but it's like they are opposites. It's kind of being right like that, right? When you say that introverts socialize less, you already say that it's opposite of what extroverts do. These two topics I think are slightly mutually exclusive, but they intersect a lot when it comes to specific cases. So when I
Okay.
talk about myself, I some of my traits come into extroverts and some of my behaviors come into the category of introverts. But the most of my traits or behaviors, as if I should call them, would define myself as an introvert. But there are some traits or behaviors, as I was saying, that come under extroversion in my behavior as well, in my life as well. Yeah.
What would that traits be? I mean, do you like to socialize or something else? You do like to explore places, I understand.
Yeah, but that's not exclusive to extroverts as well. So
Oh, is it?
no, I don't think so. I don't think anything is defined like that. I mean, socialize only means you don't like to spend a lot of time with people, because that drains you, as the phrase goes, and you have to recharge when you're on your own. Uh, it's how people phrase how introverts are, and they define it like that.
Mm-hmm. So, discussing about extroverts and introverts, do you think society is very harsh on these, like generalizing these terms?
What do you mean?
if we say an extroverted person is like that guy is an extroverted person, so are we like actually building a behavior trait of that person already in our mind? So it's like being harsh on already judging being an extrovert, or that guy what he is, I mean.
Well, we think we might know what an extrovert or introvert looks like, but I don't think we can judge from the outside who is an introvert and who is an extrovert. And when you see someone standing at the corner of a party or something, you usually categorize that person as a shy person.
But that doesn't count as an introverted person as it is,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. But because an extro introvert will have some motive or purpose in mind that they'll have to fulfill, and when someone goes to a party, the purpose is to enjoy yourself and socialize and communicate with others. It's kind of the point. So I don't think that standing in the corner stereotype applies to introverts. Just like just like going to a lot of parties that don't maybe I'm overreaching here, but I don't think going to a lot of parties define you as an extrovert.
As we're discussing about the misconceptions regarding these two biased things, or extroverted and introvert, what are these? What do we call it?
uh, Bias as in what?
I mean, as we're discussing about the misconception about the topic, many of the professions require you to be one of it. Is it like that? I mean, I've heard a lot of about extroversions are extroverted people are very less creative as compared to introverted, because they say ki if you have to be creative, you need to be thinking a lot, and you need to be in that room of your brain so that you can be creative, and allow yourself to take the risks of being creative. So I've heard this misconception. So are there any professions, or is there any professions that that requires you to be an extroverted person for that job?
Well, when you go to a call center, you have to be an extrovert, right?
It does needs to have a trait of communication skill, but that doesn't necessarily mean you to be an extrovert.
Yeah, I think introverts have a uprising of sorts, in society.
Okay.
As the internet grew and grew, I think introverts have kind of dominated the society. I think, with internet companies being like Facebook, take any company like Twitter, Facebook. If no one has to socialize at all, but they can get attention or do what they want just being on the internet without socializing with anyone, whether it is from India to probably anywhere else. I was kind of thinking about this. What kind of jobs does an introvert is suited to have? I think a lot of jobs have been created just to suit introverts right now, more than what used to be when back in the 50s and 60s, when leadership was a prominent thing and you have to be extrovert to be. I don't know if you have to be extrovert to be a leader, but it certainly helps. It certainly helps with the socializing,
Yeah.
and that has shifted to a degree because we see Mark Zuckerberg, we see people like can you name some?
No, I got to the Mark Zuckerberg thing about that.
Yeah, 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 Mark Zuckerberg is the prime example of how an introvert goes out in the world and succeeds so tremendously. And internet in general, like gamers online, playthroughs are just being done and they get famous. They have a job, they have everything they want at the tip of their hands, and
And
they don't
without
have.
even socializing with anyone personally.
Yeah, exactly. So do you think extroverts have a harder time right now, or what do you think of the situation right
Actually,
now?
actually, I differ in your opinion in this particular thing. I mean, there is a platform. I wanted to pose another question regarding this, but I'll sure first clear out the thing. It's like I differ in the opinion as like internet or say social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter have been a platform for everyone in the world, but it's been dominantly used by introverts, as you have mentioned. So it's like a social party or a social gathering of introverts at a place where all they can speak their mind, speak their heart out, and still not get out of the place they are comfortable with. I take that internet or social media platforms in that view right now, in your context. In the context, I wanted to ask, see, uh, so if we say most of the introverts are on the social media, or like they have a louder voice against in compared to extroverts. So do they have a public image to maintain on the social media for the introverts?
Well, everybody has a public image to maintain, but I don't know. I don't see how it relates to only introverts.
No, I mean, yeah, sure, everybody. No, but introverts are said to have zero to no public image, as they are very less socially active, and they are more not more engaging with the people particularly. So they have zero to no public image. But now with the internet era, in the social media playing a great part in everybody's life and a great role, so I think even the introverts have now a public image. Even though it's in social media, it's out there in the public. So it's like you can be at your place that you're comfortable with and still have a social life.
I don't think it's now just now that introverts have a public image. They had a public image, but that was of being a quiet guy or girl, and just that.
Yeah, but no, but I was actually bending to the sides of public image, as in like engaging public image.
Well, well, YouTubers are the example of introverts who are
Exactly. So
so.
that's what I was saying. Is now that they have now the internet has been as booming, and most of a lot of people, maximum people are using. So they have now a public image. So we can't actually get biased on categorizing people on the traits of extroversion and introversion until that particular person has claimed himself to be.
Well, I don't see how that helps.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't see how that helps. We should categorize that. It helps us generalize and theorize how we should behave according to that. If someone is an introvert, we should consider that he or she might not like to be in public for a long amount of time, and we should just let them go instead of just.
Yeah, actually, these two people, like extroverts, should not look down to introverts, and introverts should not look down to extroverts. That needs to be there. I mean,
Do they look down?
yeah, as I've seen a lot of discussions happening around on the internet, particularly about the misconceptions. Firstly, about the misconception, but then people are raging over about the people siding introverts are raging against extroverts of them being not very creative and not being oneself and not being spiritually active, or maybe trying to be with oneself as introverts like to have, and on the other hand extroverts look down on the introverts as in like they're having no engaging social life, and they are like stagnant in their life, and they are not progressing forward. I've seen a lot of people rage.
I guess you're right. I guess you're right because I've seen a lot of articles and a lot of videos on the internet about how introverts can be good, introverts can be. At first, it was proving ourselves to the society that we can be useful to, like we had to prove. It happened like in these recent years, in the
Uh-huh.
last 20 years. I really see a correlation between internet being internet being out there and introversion being accepted into the popular culture. You see a lot of comic book movies, comic superhero movies, which is predominantly about popular within introverted community. I think so. But introversion have been popularized so much that our fantasies have been coming out public in a way that hasn't been seen before this. And considering how we treat each other and how introverts and extroverts treat each other, there's always been a sort of tension. How outgoing person will tease a shy person, or shy as an air quotes shy, uh, to come out of his shell and go out more and live a little. So maybe this is the revenge of the introverts in some sort.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think it's fair. I think both the introverts and extroverts have their place in society. It's not like when introverts are better than extroverts or the other way around. I think we've evolved in such a way that both have a place in a society, and we have seen the evidence of extroverts, but we've really not seen in action the usefulness that introverts can bring until the recent era.
So, okay, that I will agree on you with as well. So, Ankur, do you think there's a difference in thinking, maybe, if like being a person, an extroverted person, or being an introverted person? I
Yeah,
mean, like, they do an extroverted person have a different thinking structure as compared to the introverted?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's the main thing, right? Personality
What
trait.
what do you think like
Yeah,
are the
outgoing.
main changing factor in that?
Yeah. That's the fundamental difference between introverts and extroverts, right? Socialization and not socialization. Socializing,
No, I
sorry.
mean, I'm not talking about the traits. I'm talking about the thinking structure. I mean, if they have been posed with a problem in their life, so how do you think an extroverted guy would branch out is also the solution of it, and how the introverted would branch out?
Well,
Does like is there a difference between their branching out, or do they, you know, have a similar kind of a code that and maybe ends up differently, but the stacking of the solution gets similar.
well, it depends on the problem. What the problem is. Does it involve socializing with other people, or does it involve just sitting by yourself and reading a lot?
Mm-hmm.
If it involves the former, the introvert will suffer in that because he has no practice in that. If it's the latter, the extrovert will suffer because introvert has been preparing for this for his whole life. This difference in the approach. If the extrovert will always try it out, and the approach will be like trial and error, but whereas the introvert will think about it and formalize a plan and then execute it. Both have their own advantages because some things can be time sensitive, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to plan it out. So it really depends on what the problem is and how do you want to solve it. Not only that, introverts have their strengths and weaknesses too. Like, let's say there's a task for reading and analyzing a book and making a paper on it.
Okay.
So what an introvert does is put large amount of time into reading it and then analyzing it, sticking it out.
Okay.
Whereas I don't think the extrovert will have the patience, or which is stereotypically. I mean, we just talked about the misconception, but but
Yeah.
uh, but but when I'm generalizing and talking about extroverts per se, I don't think they will find it boring. I mean, it is kind of boring. I mean, but introverts are much more likely, I think so at least, to stick it out and complete the task when it is about reflecting on yourself or being by yourself and completing the task.
Okay.
Whereas the extrovert has their own advantages, like going out in public and socializing when it's about an event.
Okay.
If the extrovert's work is to socialize primarily, he will. dominant in that field. It's his strength. I don't know much about extroverts' strength, so can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, extroverts, speaking generally, I mean, they do have a lot of advantages on talking on, socializing with people. So many of the outgoing jobs right now are, required you to be having a good communication skills, having a street tact, as they say, air quoting it, street smart people, so that they can actually bargain, or maybe convince people to get their work done. I mean, say for example, news reporters, so they have to be very tactful in their job, so that if they are not able to get what they need for their report, they start talking to someone else, or maybe they pose such questions so that they can actually squeeze out the information that they want in their report. So it's like molding the person into the decision into the results that you want, being an extrovert. And also, except from having a good communication skills, having to go around, understand cultures. I mean, see, understanding cultures is a very big and a vast topic. I mean, there are two ways to do it. I mean, there are books written on culture. So if you generalize as an introvert, and if he's interested to know in culture, so he'll read a lot of about it, and maybe understand about how the cultures are, and how did they come up to the place that they are actually being followed by the people. Whereas an extrovert would actually go into that culture, and go into the place where it's followed, and maybe talk to person one or two, and get one-on-one information on that. They do, like, as we talked about the task, and how it depends on their structure, so the thinking structure. So this is how I think, if the task is about understanding a culture, it can be a hobby for someone. So an introvert would like to read a lot, or thesis papers, and for an extrovert he'd like to get a one-on-one information on that, and get. So it's not like they will get wrong information, or one will get a better information. It's not like that. It's just that the ways are different. They may end up learning the same thing. So it's actually not two different things, being an extrovert or being an introvert. It's just two different ways of getting into a result that you have to, or like getting into a life of the that you want to live.
Well, don't you think the research that in your example the people are doing, the extrovert will have more of the primary research done, and the extrovert will do the secondary research?
Yeah, primary and secondary is a part, but it may factor if we quote it in a primary and secondary thing. But in the end, if we measure out the information, I think it would turn out to be more or less the same. I think there wouldn't be a vast difference. I mean, if you're doing a secondary information, right, that is also done by a professional, that is shortlisted or taken down by a professional who has written a book, maybe, or a thesis. Whereas on the other hand, there is no professional intake, but a very personal one by the extrovert. So I think it will measure it out.
You think so?
Yeah, I feel it. I think so. Yeah.
I mean, in this situation, it looks like is it the monument
I was talking about cultures.
cultures? So the cultures are predominantly old, right?
Yep.
So how do you think the extrovert will come to the same conclusions the introvert will?
No, I'm not saying they will be in the same condition, but there will not be a vast difference in the results they'll get. I
Why
mean,
not?
I think so. I mean, suppose we take a culture, and an introvert would read a lot about it, and how rituals are performed and why is it so. And whereas on the other hand, the extrovert would go and ask about it. So I think,
Don't you think the extrovert will get the recent information, not the information that has been in the culture for a long time, and it seems like a job ill-equipped for the extrovert, because there's only so much you can do about
yeah,
this.
that's what I wanted to clear it out, so that even the introvert will have a lot of old ritual, like old scriptures coming in, or old how the ritual was performed, and how why are they performed in such a way. Whereas on the other hand, the extrovert would only get the information that are just a few generations, and maybe if he is lucky, he can get an old information. So that is what I was saying. Ki an introvert and extrovert would get a result if we take out the amount of hard work done in that from that equation. The results, raw results that we would equate, there would not be much of a difference. I mean, an introvert would not have a one-on-one experience, but he can also come up with the answer if posed the same question of the same culture. And whereas an extrovert would be a very recent answering person, like his answers would be dependent on many of the recent things. Culture is actually a very vast topic to be taken, but actually that's what came up to my mind actually. uh,
So don't you agree the extrovert will be ill-equipped?
no, I think it's not being ill-equipped. I think the difference in results would be there, for sure, but it wouldn't be much. I'm talking about the results. I mean,
The things that have been written in the books have been curated by professionals and not just based on primary research, because there has been a lot of evidence and thought invented in the books. Don't you think the introvert will be miles ahead because just because it's in book form and it has been thought through and there's been evidence and because there's a book which is a condensed form of information. Don't you think it will?
I think I'll give you an example of mine, a very recent example. I recently visited Ajanta Caves, which is in Aurangabad. You know that place? It's in Maharashtra.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it has like 30 beautiful caves for 30 beautiful Buddhist caves to be particular. So they date the date back to 9th and 10th century BC. So that's how long it has been preserved. So now if I have to read about Ajanta caves, right? So I would get a lot, but that would be that for me, like on my experience, I have read a lot before visiting that place. So I read. So what I learned was it certainly helped to me understand, but I'd actually like to visit that place and maybe get the surrounding, get the atmosphere around, and maybe the people, the guides who are to assist you and tell you, maybe get some information from them out as well. So I think if you factor, for me this is the task, and if I am performing it, I like to visit that place and get raw data from what I can inculcate with the sculptures, with the culture that they created, with the architecture that they made. You say.
Well, I have to disagree here because I think in this particular task, the introvert will definitely will be ahead. Childhood can be very interesting in terms of introversion and
Mm-hmm.
extroversion. You know how children adapt. Children are very socially have to be very socially stimulated.
Okay.
To have that childhood and to not have that childhood, see growth that can happen in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I was about to get into the childhood thing. I was about to ask you, how was your childhood, or up to the teenage, being an introvert? I mean, was it difficult? Like, were you teased a lot, or it was just fine as another person? I mean, what was your experience to take out from your personal childhood?
Well, I was never bullied a lot because I was never a pushover, but
Was there any pressure from the parents, or say family or friends, to be around a lot and all, something like that? Can you summarize how it was?
well, my childhood wasn't really full of conflicts because I was very naive, and I don't think it relates
The-
to introversion that much, but maybe it does because I was not socially involved with a lot of people and they didn't pick on me that enough to make me understand what going out and growing up really feels like. So
Okay.
I had a late growing up, as someone will say. I don't think it's really interesting for an introvert's childhood. I don't think it's related to teasing and all that because I was never teased a lot. I kind of deflected it or I didn't get it sometimes.
Okay.
because because yeah, but, I didn't know what they were referring to. Was it an insult? I don't know. I don't know.
So
So
now that you know, what do you think of it?
well, well, I can handle it now and reply back. So how do you think your experience differs from mine?
Okay, now, from your words, I can sketch out an image of being of a child who is not very socially active but has done just fine. As you said, you didn't know why would they tease you, and you don't know to be feel insulted or not. So I can sketch out a little image. For me, as in for my childhood, I was very, you can say, as compared to you, I was very socially active. I mean, I used to play a lot, and I used to go out a lot. Picnics and all were my thing, and every Sunday would be cricket sessions happening with my friends, street cricket from morning 7 to 11, a lot. So I think I've played a lot and I've been around people a lot. So that just for my interest, I was a very sporting person. I like to play a lot of sports and games since childhood. So I was to be with a lot of people to play around, to play games with, to play sports with, and that actually helped with making friends. So I can say ki I had a very socially active childhood. Yeah.
So so that brings us into our present life now because
What kind of changes have you seen in yourself being an introverted since childhood? I mean, if you would be having a lot of friends, extroverted friends, including me, obviously.
well, I don't have any other perspective, so I don't see how I can say
Yeah, you
answer
can.
that
How?
question.
Okay, okay, I get it, I get it.
But I think my life has been a little different than most people. I can't say for certain, but I've seen a lot of my habits have been a little quirkier,
Okay.
but I don't really know because I haven't lived any other life, so I have just my perspective.
So, what did you think about?
Yeah, I was trying to bring this into our present life because it's kind of interesting that an extrovert like yourself will pick game development, which is highly introverted field.
Okay.
I think,
Okay.
or and me being an introvert will pick photography, which is a very extroverted field.
So, okay.
It's kind of interesting when I think about it. What do you think pushed you to become a game developer in spite of being a extrovert?
I think, as I posed the question in the starting, key is, are there any job that requires to be extroverted and introverted? But I don't think that actually is. I mean, being learning and doing into game designing actually does require somewhere to be extroverted. It's not like you can be just on your own and work in a company or run a company or something like that. So you need to be both communicating as well as with your own self while you're actually making games. And I think for photography as well, I think other than having communication skills, it does require you to be your own critic, a lot. I mean, that is required for everyone, but it's not very predominantly an extroverted job in my eyes, I mean.
Well, when I say extroverted in nature, I assume that we're talking about socializing with a lot of different people
Okay.
because because I don't think there's a problem with socializing with a group of people when you're an introvert because I never faced that. If I know someone, a group of people actually, I didn't have any problem or any hesitation even.
Okay.
But when you're socializing or have a job that requires you to meet with a lot of people, there's a lot of introducing yourself and building rapport that goes into it,
Mm-hmm.
which I personally find very draining for me. And because game development is such a team effort, you have to have a certain team in mind, and
Sure,
you
sure,
have to
sure.
stick it out. So I think it's an introverted field. I don't know if
I think we have a different view. I like, and for game designing, from if you see from my view, though I'm working in a team, I'm still having to do the research. And as I just said earlier, for me, if I'm doing a research, though I will read a lot, but I'll still like to be in that place and research. So if you see game designing from my perspective, from what I'm actually thinking of, that would also make it a job, like, include the traits of being an introvert as an extrovert. There are a lot of mixed traits right now. I mean, an extrovert would have a lot of traits of an introvert person, and introvert would have a lot of traits of an extrovert person. I mean, there have been a lot of mix and match, mixed bag thing right now in the world.
Well, when you talk about being an extrovert, you talk about just socializing, right? That's how we defined it. I don't think having to do research has anything to do with extroversion, right?
Uh-huh, yeah.
And we discussed this before, right? This is kind of a misconception that extroverts can't do this and can only be productive when they go out. Why did you choose that field?
I don't actually. My reason for going into game designing is pure and pure of my what I want to do with my life. I mean, as I said, I used to play a lot of games, so that really inculcated me to think how are these games made. I mean, people do have a lot of thinking process to follow on while making a game, and the execution production team as well. So that really fascinated me, and got me engaged into this gaming industry field. So that's how I like to get to make games, or get to know about how the games is made. So I started learning onto that, and that's how the domino effect started. I mean, the chain reacted, and now that I'm here and I'm studying, I mean,
It didn't have anything to do with you being an extrovert, right?
I don't think I know. I don't think so. It has to play an extroverted card like over here.
Yeah, I think in my case too. I think it has nothing to do with me being an
Uh huh.
introvert. Like I wanted, I wanted to get out of not be an engineer for first thing. Okay,
Okay.
I really I studied for 2 years before dropping it thoroughly. I didn't want to be an sorry,
Engineer. Yeah.
engineer, and I really kind of hated the idea of that. I have to spend my whole life being in this four-walled
Cubicle.
cubicle or any office of any kind. I like going outside, even after being an introvert. But yeah,
That includes an extroverted trait of being out and having to socialize with people, if like going out, right?
maybe. I mean, if you're not meeting a lot of people, it's not really an extroverted activity.
Uh huh.
And when I go out, I don't talk to a lot of strangers.
Mm-hmm. Talking about traits, I mean, how differently, if we right now write down, like, I being an extrovert, considering myself as an extrovert, have chosen a field that I think is well equipped for an introverted guy, and as for you, it's like an extrovert job for an introvert guy. So I think there has been a lot of mix and match happening in the world.
I think just that being an introvert when for the first 20 years of my life, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
first at least 15 or 16 years of my life,
Okay.
when I was really not doing anything that an extrovert would stereotypically do, uh, introvert would stereotypically do. Uh, I had enough of that, I think, and I needed to get out and do more than what I was really capable of or wanted to do. I think there's good things to be found when you're not just following what's easy.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think
I
I think
agree.
I think I kind of followed that instinct and just overrided the introverted guy in me. I don't think I like going out and exploring new places, but
Okay.
I still have trouble, or I'm not really that free in myself to introduce myself to everyone. but that does not mean that I won't go out. And back to the question, I derailed the conversation a lot. I was talking about how you're a game developer right now, designer right now. So has there been a similar case that you were already doing the things you wanted and wanted something more? What was the reason you chose that?
No, as I said, I like to go behind the curtains on how the games are made, and since childhood, I mean, I was not much exposed to game development or game designing per se. I mean, we were just in schools. I mean, in my school, I was just creative writing and creative drawing were actually a part. That actually gave me a boost. I mean, that actually made self, what they call it, as self motivation in me, that I can think of myself a little bit creative mind, so that I want to use this somewhere where I can feel proud and passionate about. And that time, games had just begun in the market, and I started playing and I started loving them. And I used to certainly think a lot about how the designers or how the developers used to make these games, and what was the thought process they used to go through. And I certainly wanted to be a part of it. So that's how game designing came onto me. So I started doing research on how to study and how to get into the industry and get into the colleges of game designing. So that's after I did my research, I got into this, so that get into game designing industry.
I think you're onto something here with your being creative, and both of us being creative in some sense, you know. But game designing and photography both are creative fields,
Mm-hmm.
and being a creative requires you to discover new ways of doing things and going places no one has been before, and you can't do that just being stuck to one thing.
Yep.
And I think I had enough of being an introvert and staying in home and doing my own research, secondary research, and all that. I needed to, I think, explore new places to just for the sake of doing it, for the sake of doing something different, you know.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I was deviating to. That's what I was directing this topic to. You still call yourself an introvert, but still are in the developing phase, or understanding yourself. Understanding yourself as in you want to explore, and you're done with the secondary research and reading a lot. You don't want to be in one place all the time, but you still are an introvert person, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I'm kind of trying to inculcate some extroverted traits in myself. Like my job kind of requires talking to models and always introducing myself, and it kind of pushes me into that direction of being an introvert. That is kind of the definition of being an introvert when you socialize with a lot of different people. So I think I'm kind of incorporating those traits in me, but I'm not fully comfortable in doing that because I really think it over a lot, and when I don't, it really messes up with my flow of how the conversation will go with the new person that I'm meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of trying to incorporate those.
Which are actually very helpful for the field that you're aiming for.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very kind of necessary
Okay.
for me to incorporate those traits. I have a difficult time doing that, and I have kind of a weakness, if you will, when it comes to this profession, because when I have to learn to be an extrovert, but most of the people in this field are already extroverts. You know, those are the people who like conversing with new people every time, and they like the attention.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to learn to enjoy that. The point is, I don't see the point of. I didn't see the point before, but when I go out of my own comfort zone and talk to new people, I see the point of why I need to do this and why I need to do that. It's not just being an introvert and sticking to your own guns and just not exploring new areas. That's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
I need to explore new areas, and I think it comes down to being creative rather than being an introvert or an extrovert. When we talk about our
Feels.
fields, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I agree to that.
Do you have any kind of challenges being an extrovert in the field of game designing? What kind of challenges do you face
Uh,
that you wouldn't face otherwise when talking about extroverted fields?
in game designing, actually, I would say, कि, there's no such difficulty that I have been faced with, because when if I call myself an extrovert, I say, कि, I like to talk to a lot of people. I like to talk to people. I like to know them personally, and have an interview. Maybe have a one-on-one good talk. But it's not like, I don't like to be with myself, get some self motivation, or if I'm down, if I'm feeling a little down, a little low. So I don't go out to seek happiness, or seek fun and enjoyment. Sometimes I like to be indoors and try to calm myself down and get my things straight. So it's not completely that I've been an extrovert for my life, but there are some traits that I still include. If I have to present myself, I still include this trait. There are sometimes I like to set the things slow and all.
Do you not get bored when you're doing it for a long time?
Yeah, it is boring after a long time, but it's like a sweet time. I mean, if you want to get alone time, so that's when I like to. So unlike pure introverts who are there all the time, but I for me it's like I do like to, but not little less and not more. I mean, there's a sweet duration of time that I like, maybe say a couple of nights, maybe.
What do you think about ambiverts? It's a term that people will use a lot in recent memory for me, to say that, oh, I'm an a special person because I have the both the qualities of extrovert and introvert. I can think, I can do socializing, I can do everything. Do you think there's anything such as ambivert, or is it just people upping themselves up?
That accent actually cracked me up, man. That accent, man. Yeah, a friend of mine actually forwarded a link. There are those links that the articles on the Scoop Poop or say BuzzFeed. These guys have a lot of articles. So one of my friend actually forwarded one of them, which was actually 5 or 10 things you'll relate if you are an introverted extrovert. I was quite shocked. I mean, I was quite shocked to get that term in my memory, like introverted extrovert. So as I read about it, it was the same thing. I mean, it included a lot of extroversion traits, like socializing, partying around, and uh, meeting new people. And it also included the things of an introverted and traits of an introvert person. I mean, like sitting back down, sitting low, and be with oneself with songs and all, or just cut every communication with the outside world, and just relax your mind. So I think that term actually set me thinking on how is that even possible. And as you said, ambiverts, I think it's more or less the same we are talking about, right?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, and the term was introverted extrovert. So it's particularly like a person is claiming themselves to be an extrovert, but still accept the traits of being an introvert, and they want to call this self, and they want to call this mixed bag of traits as an introverted extrovert. I mean, I don't see the point in that. I mean, they call themselves an extrovert, but they still have some qualities. They want a medium thing, other than an extreme introvert than an extreme extrovert.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
didn't make sense actually in my mind.
Yeah, I think they assume that introverted people are these extreme cases that stay in home all the time and just stay in home and don't socialize at all and don't stereotypical things that nobody really is. Like, I don't think there's a extroverted person so extroverted that they will go mad if they don't socialize.
Uh huh.
Everyone has times that they're lonely. Everyone
Yeah.
has times that they are with someone else.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with being an ambivert. It depends on which way you're leaning towards
Yep.
the most.
Particularly, yeah, I agree.
Like I said before in the podcast, that I think introversion and extroversion is a spectrum.
Okay.
It's not likely that you're 100% extroverted and 100% introverted.
Yep.
You're always a mix of back. The thing that makes you an introvert or extrovert is
Is where you
which way
bend.
which way do you lean? Okay,
Uh-huh.
and an ambivert, according to Google, is a balance of extroverted and introverted traits. But everyone is a balance of introverted and
Yeah,
extroverted
not
traits.
balance. I mean, like like equal
I,
balance, but I mean,
yeah, of course,
if you actually
of course.
do it on a trade, I mean, some of it, like it could be 51-49. Like it's never a 50-50 thing.
I mean, how would you even know if it's a 50-50 thing? How
Yeah,
would you
exactly.
define 50-50? I
Yeah.
mean, what is 50-50? You know, you say that socializing is for extroverts and not socializing is for introverts. But where's the middle point?
Yeah, there is. You
Where,
can't.
where will you pinpoint that this is the point where introverts begin and this is the point where extroversion begins?
Yeah,
I don't
actually.
think there's a point because it depends on the situation. A lot of times it's not abstract. It will depend on the situation, and I don't think there's a certain situation which divides the introverts and extroverts into halves. It's a spectrum, and everyone is on the spectrum. I don't think there's this thing called ambivert because if there is, everyone is an ambivert. I don't
And
think.
if there is, I mean, yeah, I'd like to know more about the 50-50 balance and what all traits, they include in 50% introvert and 50% extrovert. And it actually got me thinking if ambivert was what you take a general term for having a equal balance, like I got the term was introverted extrovert. So what would be the other way around? An extroverted introvert? I mean, this is an age of people are getting a lot of terminologies for very unrequired things. I mean, it's very it's not
when
useful actually.
when you say extrovert and introvert, it already implies that you're mostly towards the extroverted trait. Okay, so that makes you an extrovert. When you say you're an introverted extrovert, it means that you're more leaning towards the introverted trait. So that's just introvert. That's not introverted extrovert. That's just adding unnecessary terminology to the definition. I don't think it explains anything more than an introvert or extrovert describes.
I absolutely agree. I mean, there is no need for the terminologies to be there or an ambivert for per se.
So now that we have solved that problem, um, what do you think we should discuss next?
I think we should.
Do you think we should conclude this? And if we do, how should we do it?
There should be. I think people should also not rage and not look down
Why would they
onto
do
them.
that?
No, I'm just stating. I mean, as I told you in the beginning of this podcast, there are people raging out and all. I think
About
it
what?
creates introverted people raging on or looking down on the extroverts and extroverts into the introverts, as I said in the earlier. But I,
Oh,
I, I think it should not be there. I think this behavior, creates a balance, not just only into the society, but actually in oneself also. Like a person cannot be, as you said, it's a spectrum, right? So it cannot be a person to lean 100 onto this side or 100 onto that side. I mean, there's always in between hundreds, in between the extremes. And when we live into between the extremes, I don't think we should, generalizingly look down or maybe judge by this characteristic. I mean,
so that is the moral of the podcast.
I think.
Okay, so what did what did we conclude in this podcast? We concluded that we should not be terrible people. We should know.
That disclaimer that no one should be terrible. Okay, everyone should be a good person. I mean,
You don't say.
okay, go ahead.
Okay. So and we don't quite agree on the definitions. Still don't know if you're an introvert or extrovert based on what you have said so far.
Okay.
Uh,
No, as it's a spectrum, I still consider myself being an extrovert, but because we are a mixed bag, you
uh-huh.
get that.
And the term Ambivert is it
is actually unnecessary.
unnecessary? Okay, okay. If you want to say it like that, okay. And there are some misconceptions, and as always, there are some strengths to both of them.
Yep.
I think we have come to a agreement that
Yep.
that we should not be terrible people, and we will see you the next time.
Yep.
Bye.
Sure.
Bye.
Great reason. Bye bye. Shouldn't laugh, man. Shouldn't laugh.
We're trying to be so professional, right? It comes
But
off
in
as
the end,
comedic, Let's not try to be professional and let's just try to be ourselves, okay?
we are trying. You just laughed out of
No,
nowhere.
you said it like you said it like
Nah,
oh let
nah, nah.
let
I
let's
don't
let's
believe.
redo the intro, okay?
Okay, sure.
And not sound like we're advertising for something, okay?
We aren't actually. Did we sound like
No,
that?
I think this is the No Chill podcast. This sounds like
So what else do you know? Or how else can you say the name?
this is the No Chill podcast. Maybe.
Oh wow, that's surely different thing.
I don't know. I don't know. Let's redo the thing. Okay.
Okay, fine. Go
No.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Start with that.
Let's stop now. Let's
Fuck off.